Okay, I'd like to introduce Evie Hidysmith. I'm actually going to read your artist statement that you submitted because I loved it so much, and I thought it just captured what you're doing so well. So Evie says, for me, making art is a tool to tease out a connection or idea I know exists but can't quite put my finger on. Lately, I've been grappling with what it means to embody this kind of polarity. I'm trying to find balance in existing on opposite sides of spectrums, to be both wholesome and hardcore, self-loving and self-loathing, earnest and fake, chaotic and stable. The sea is teaching me how to hold this tension with grace and to find power in it. So I love your words, Evie. Thank you for being here. Welcome.
Such like a ball of pure joy. It made me so happy. I have to say I'm a little nervous. I've never actually talked about my art in front of pretty much anyone, much less a room full of strangers. So thank you for being my first go. Yeah, as my artist statement said, I think I grew up here in San Francisco in the outer Sunset, so I spent a lot of time going to Ocean Beach as a kid. And I grew up in a pretty chaotic family. My dad and my older brother are both bipolar, and they really struggled with sort of having stable emotional lives and also like having a stable family environment. And so I think I have this really intense relationship to polarity. And I think what that did to me as a kid was like feel like I had to always be perfectly in the middle, and like I had to have some sort of, I don't know, I had to like do everything perfectly but also never be too much of one thing. I can't take too much attention, I can't give too much attention away, I always, feel too tall all the time, so I kind of like go like this to make myself shorter, just sort of forcing myself to exist in this state of being in the middle in ways that I think were really stunting to me, especially as a younger person. And after coming, I went to college in the East Coast, so I came back after that to San Francisco and spent a lot of time at the beach, especially during COVID. We'd go runs on the beach every day, jump in the really cold water. And what I started realizing was that like the ocean is always this place for me that I find really calming. And one of the reasons I think that is because it exists on like both sides of this spectrum in a really intense way. Like it is always completely terrifying and it is always completely beautiful, and it's never like in the middle of those two things, it's always both of those things at once. And so I started thinking about that idea a lot, and a lot of the materials for this, especially this little one, which is kind of hard to see, but if you stand at like the right angle, you can see through it. There's like a little thing in the middle you can look after. But this bone, and then this other bone that didn't make it into these two, but I have at home. It's like a huge sea lion scapula, and this one's like a vertebrae. And I was having a really hard day a couple months ago, feeling just like everybody hates me, like there's nothing, I can't do anything right, I'm like too much all the time, or too little all the time, I'm too much and never enough, all these things. And I went for a run on the beach and found this like entire sea lion corpse that was just decaying. And I was like, wow, why do I find this so disgusting but also so appealing and like really powerful? And it feels like it feels like it's meaningful, it feels like it's kind of a bad omen that something bad is going to happen, but it also feels really calming. And I think there's this way that death in my life and also sort of like communally, socially, has that same power as the sea of like being too much and too frightening but also so calming, and like dead things in particular. And so I, with my very dear friend who was a med school student, we like picked apart the bones and like identified what each of the bones were, and I brought them home and then made these. And I think the knits for me, like, knit structures are like so strong but also so delicate. And a lot of the materials from this are like from my grandmother, who was also a big knitter and who I learned a lot of my skills from. So I think that is all I have to say. Sorry, that was a lot of fast talking.
Evie, you're doing great. You're actually one of the highlights, you're exemplifying one of the highlights of these events, which is to give the opportunity for people to speak about their work for the first time. It's super scary, but you also learn so much about yourself. So thank you for being brave and being here.
Anybody have questions?
What are you making now? What are you working on?
That is a good question. I have this huge quilt that I've been working on since the beginning of the summer. That is sort of like a process. There's like a certain kind of therapy called cognitive processing therapy that was made specifically for like processing PTSD. And it's a series of worksheets. And so the quilt is this huge like figure that's beaded, again out of a lot of my like grandmother's pillowcases and all of these things. And so instead of like just doing the worksheets, I would do the worksheet and then draw, and then all of the drawings sort of made themselves into this quilt that sort of was part of doing this therapy. So it's been almost done for many, many weeks. And that last push, and I'm having trouble with it. Yeah.
Have you always been an artist since you were little, or is it a later?
That's a good question. I was just talking about this yesterday. Because I was in my mom's basement going through stuff from when I was a kid, and I found like an invitation to my first or second birthday, and it was like Evie art party. It's really cute. My dad is a painter, and I think that he taught me how to knit and crochet when I was like 4 or 5, and I always painted and drew a lot as a kid. And I think that because I have a complicated relationship with him, and because of all of this stuff of feeling like I can't take up space, I think I really shied away from art. I went to Brown, and all my friends went to RISD, the art school right next door, and I felt like I could never be like them. And I think constantly made art sort of next to them and alongside them, and felt like I couldn't take ownership of it until recently. So yes and no, it's always been huge for me, but also like it's scary. It's scary. Like I can't believe you just quit your job, you know? Like it's scary to let yourself take up space.
Insanity.
Yeah, it's really intense, so.
Well, congratulations.
Thanks.
Great job. Beautiful work.
We can be done if there are no other questions.
Thank you.
Thanks.